Welcome back, ladies and lads. We're going to be reacting to another video about the death of Fortnite today. And I'm going to be a little bit taller this time. So if you watched the last video, at the end I mentioned AussieAntics. AussieAntics is a commentator within the competitive community. He's one of the authorities within the space. Is no builds the future of Fortnite? I think you probably already have your answer, but allow AussieAntics to argue his point. If you enjoy this kind of content, be sure to like and subscribe, share it with someone you love. I want to get a discussion going. The last video had a lot of discussion on the comments. That makes me happy. I want to talk with you guys about how you feel about the current state of Fortnite. But without delaying, let's get into this video.
The game that took the entire world by storm. A game that exploded off its quirky items, unique engagements, and of course, its signature building mechanic. However, throughout the years, Fortnite has declined in popularity. Many people have given their opinions on the reason for the game's decline. The Battle Royale genre has become stale, with the global pandemic easing, many people are resuming normal life, and the game itself has just lost its magic.
In terms of losing the magic, that's a good point. Fortnite has become pretty corporate. There's so many crossovers in it, and the updates they do on it are so safe because they obviously don't want to upset people. They don't want to upset the apple cart anymore. In the beginning, they were allowed to be very experimental because they were trying to define themselves. Obviously, some of the creators have quit. Some of the really skilled creators have quit. That, I think, is a pertinent point because if very skilled players quit, how are above average or average players going to maintain themselves, you know? They're going to become even more frustrated faster.
The sweats. More simply put, the player base had just become too good. Gone were the days of jumping on for a casual fun game of Fortnite with your friends. It wasn't just players who are feeling these struggles as well. Even creators whose job it was to play the game every day began to become frustrated.
The big reason for this really is that there wasn't a third-person battle royale like this game before. There was PUBG, but PUBG was very obtuse. The mechanics were awful. H1Z1, it was worse than PUBG in that respect. Fortnite actually had a really high learning curve, even besides the building. Learning just the movement and the gunplay and the navigation was a learning curve in and of itself. There were some players who had been on PC, had been playing the other battle royales. They had a clear advantage in the beginning. So I think a lot of people, they kind of missed those days when they had a clear advantage over the people who were just learning the game. Little did we know that the build mechanic would become so insane that even really smart, talented players would just get frustrated with it and give it up.
Fortnite's popularity began rapidly declining, especially towards the end of 2021. Despite all of this though, almost no one could have predicted what Fortnite would do next. With the introduction of Chapter 3 Season 2, Epic Games would remove building from Fortnite. With this gone, it would just be a subpar, goofy, third-person battle royale, right? Wrong. Despite initial concerns, no builds exploded with popularity. Players were returning to their once beloved game in waves.
The thing that really made Zero Build work, truthfully, is that at the beginning of Chapter 1, they introduced a bunch of new mechanics like mantling and sliding. Fortnite third-person experience de facto became the best third-person battle royale experience. There really isn't competition. I have yet to try Modern Warfare 2's third-person, and the third-person Warzone may have an edge. I don't know, we'll see. But the basic movement mechanics of Fortnite right now already have an incredibly high skill ceiling. It's a very intense, visceral battle royale in its own right, without the building.
No single previous update or season saw such a surge of growth as the introduction of no builds. They were free to enjoy the game once again, and it felt completely different, but also familiar. Along with this surge in player base, many of Fortnite's favorite OG creators would return to the game. It even brought new creators previously unknown to Fortnite, and with it, their audiences.
Now, XQC was not actually new to the Fortnite scene at this time. Him and Tfue had been hanging out mid-Chapter 2. He had been playing Arena, but ultimately it was the builds that kept him out of the game. Now, for players like him who are more casual, I don't think they're going to take Zero Build seriously as a competitive avenue. But they'll probably boot up Fortnite a couple more times a year, which I guess at this point is really Epic Games' goal. They just want people to boot the damn game up.
Fortnite even went one step further, introducing no-build tournaments, which often get an even higher number of players than regular build tournaments.
The reason more people play the tournaments in Zero Build is it's easier to get to the money. There's only a 2-round, and you play both rounds on the same night, Friday. There's not so many tournaments where everyone is thinned out across them. Build mode has spread itself too thin in the competitive department.
Is no builds the future of Fortnite? To answer this question, we need to first do a brief history of building in Fortnite. We need to go all the way back to 2011, when Fortnite was showcased to the world for the very first time. The initial concept of the game: build a fort, defeat the husk, or zombies. Often people forget that Fortnite was never intended to be a battle royale.
Now, Fortnite's initial vision was to be a persistent world with a day-night cycle, and during the day you'd go and you'd loot the world, during the night you'd base up and fight the hordes. Honestly, if it was like that, it might have been more successful than it was, but it probably wouldn't have been at the level of the Battle Royale version. Instead, we kind of got a half-formed mode where you go on individual missions from a game hub, and it really doesn't have any flavor. It's just kind of there in my eyes. It's not been fully realized, and Save the World will never be fully realized.
The building mechanic was intended to be one of constructing a defensible position or hastily put up a wall or ramp for defense against incoming fire. It was this added feature of building that revolutionized the Battle Royale genre and saw the game explode in popularity. Yet it was far from the use of building we would see today.
It's crazy to look at those build battles and see how, advanced it's become. The margin for error, that's the real key, is that the margin for error back then was significantly higher. You could afford to mess up your builds and still survive and still have a fighting chance. It just isn't like that anymore if you actually are a builder.
When building was a key feature of Fortnite, but outside of the top tier pros, was limited to minimal builds and instead relied more on positioning, aim, and the use of all the fun and unique items of the game.
See, that Daquan clip was essentially a zero build clip. I think he built one piece. There was one ramp built, but imagine if that ramp was already there already, like someone had thrown a porta bunker. That was just aim, pure aim and flick skill. The early seasons of Fortnite were a lot more similar to zero build than people would like to remember, honestly.
You didn't need to spend thousands of hours practicing your high ground retakes to defeat your opponent. The game was for the most part as Epic had originally intended. It was a shooting game with a building mechanic. This was the answer to the frustrations of regular battle royales. Not only this, it was an entirely new mechanic to learn and enjoy.
At the end of the day, it is Epic's decisions that they made through their patches that has put building where it is now. They could have turned building into anything. They could have added cooldowns, they could have added mat limits, they could have done anything they wanted. Truthfully, at a certain point, they became kind of passive-aggressive with the community. It's weird. It felt like a relationship, like a real relationship, because the crowd got really mad about the mechs. So when Fortnite went into Chapter 2, Epic Games just stopped putting out patch notes telling people what was happening in the game. Rather than taking an authoritative position, they allowed themselves to get beat up by the community and then retreat entirely, instead of just having a clear vision of what they wanted the game to be. And I think that's what it is at the end of the day, is because Battle Royale was slapped together, Fortnite, Epic Games, they never had a clear vision of what they wanted. Maybe they did at some point, but by the time they thought of it, it was already too late for them to go back.
Epic, seeing this, began to further develop building in Fortnite, and with the addition of turbo building, the ability to hold down your build bind and seamlessly build continuously, Fortnite very quickly progressed from a shooting game with a building mechanic to a building game with a shooting mechanic.
Compare that clip of that guy going up to the clip we saw of Myth earlier. This is why I say turbo building it's the fault of turbo building. But turbo building was really just there so that controllers could keep up with keyboards. On keyboard, people were already building like they had turbo building, essentially. The real solution would have been cooldowns. It would have been build cooldowns.
Game modes being added like Playground and eventually Creative meant players would spend hours upon hours practicing complex building maneuvers. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing. A game where the best player always wins is a dream for competitive players. And on the back of this, Fortnite would become a premier esports, boasting some of the biggest prize pools we've ever seen in gaming.
I think Fortnite got super famous without turbo building, and then turbo building was put there to give parity, and then it was a very slow decline from the peak. Because a lot of people still loved the game, the people who utilized creative, it was still a small number of people. Content creators, the cycle of content creation also was a big factor. There's always this race to be the guy who puts out the big tip video. So everyone started exploring creative, started really digging deep into the mechanics of building. Pretty soon, people were able to become a very good, definitely above average, just by watching their videos and practicing their forms. It kind of became like an assembly line of Fortnite builders, of creative warriors. They were just getting pumped out. You know, by the time Winter Royale rolled around and the time World Cup rolled around, The game was already sorta on the downturn. A lot of the casuals were already kind of fed up with it. The mech that they brought in was like a last-ditch effort for them to attract many people who had already kind of written off the game. I think in large part it's overstated how much true high-level building fueled this game's popularity. I think there was a certain level, like a certain plateau, that people just kind of tuned out at. Like, they enjoyed building to a certain point, but once it got too complex, it was not for the casual crowd anymore.
Tournaments like the World Cup would see record levels of participation. Let's fast forward now though through the rest of Chapter 2 and continue our story in Chapter 2 Season 8, the last season of Chapter 2. The player base has declined, and anytime you ask someone why they quit Fortnite, it would almost always be met with something along the lines of, I was sick of 9-year-olds building the Taj Mahal the second I shot a single bullet at them.
I mean, this is true to an extent. Some people, I guess, overstate how much they get built on because some people just aren't good. And now, at this point, there was skill-based. So they would be playing with players kind of in their skill range. But it's just that the more you play Fortnite, the harder the lobbies become. Even if you don't get better. This is an inherent problem of skill-based, is that rather than taking your chances on getting a lobby of low-skill players or a lobby of high-skill players, you're going to be in lobbies that always match you, and they're always going to try to hold you at a certain statistic, because that statistic is considered average. The game will always try to hold you at a 1 KD, it'll always try to hold you at like a 2 to 4% win rate, because that's what it considers the average players. So as you win more, it's just going to throw you with incredibly difficult players and smash you down. The sense of progression just isn't there when skill-based is in a game. You're not satisfied with the process of learning, because you don't get better results for getting better at the game. Fundamentally, skill-based is flawed.
In an attempt to combat this growing hatred of sweats and overbuilding, Fortnite implemented a meta that many saw as the direct attempt to solve this issue, the SMG. The hardcore player base would quickly find many of their drilled building mechanics and high ground retakes effectively useless in the face of a build shredding, face melting, and overall overpowered SMG.
The SMG power was a slow creep. There was the rapid fire a couple seasons before, but it had a very small mag. It magged up pretty fast. This stinger was big. I think what really makes people mad at Epic Games is that they were slapping everyone in the face. They were slapping the faces of those that got good at building by introducing broken mechanics, and they were slapping the faces of people who were bad at building by not introducing the zero build mode early, not creating restrictions on building. Epic Games themselves created a very antagonistic atmosphere among the player base, where everyone who was playing the game felt personally attacked by the game itself, which I think is a bigger factor. I think that ultimately contributed more to the downfall of the game. Nobody felt like they were being listened to. Nobody felt like they were being catered to. It seemed like Epic was trying to please everyone and pleasing nobody. And that's where they made the dramatic play for zero build, which they should have done a lot sooner, in my opinion.
How could Epic somehow draw new and old players back to the game who desired a more casual experience while also maintaining their existing player base who had supported the game for years developing their skills at building? Split the game in two. The no-build game mode would be added in Chapter 3 Season 2. While this was met with excitement and positivity by new and returning players, despite the game mode being split from the regular playlist, much of the existing audience who preferred building in Fortnite became upset and challenged by Epic's attention and efforts into no builds.
No build was a long time coming, and you couldn't do something like low build or build restrictions because there's a large portion of gamers who just do not want to whip out the build mechanic. I know a couple personally who don't even have build on their controls anymore. They took it off because they never ever played build mode. This was a last ditch effort, and truthfully, it's probably the last batch of casual players that Fortnite will ever grab. Creative 2.0 is a thing, but I don't know if the way Epic handles Battle Royale is gonna bode well for Creative 2.0. Creative 2.0, in my opinion, is kind of mismanaged. It's very sloppy. Creative 1.0 is still very glitchy. It's still very hard to make maps work correctly in that game mode. Fortnite, in large part, is between a rock and a hard place. They really have no choice but to cater as casual as they possibly can right now. That's the long and short of it, the unfortunate fact of the matter.
Now being over half a year since no build was added to the game, and whether players like it or not, it appears to be the future of the game. It has a higher average participation in tournaments due to the lower skill ceiling. It has higher average viewership numbers due to it being more accessible to content creators. Epic's goal ultimately was a success.
I like to say that I think my channel started to grow with the invention of Zero Build as well. With Zero Build, my content definitely became better. A lot of new people came into the game. A lot of people that watch me started Fortnite with Zero Build. So I can't argue with a single point he made right there. It's all actual factual. And ultimately, I don't think we can really argue with the title of AussieAntics' video. No build is definitively the future of Fortnite. I think the real question is, to what capacity will building be a part of the future of Fortnite? Is there a way that they can change building to make people want to play it again, or to make new players want to try it out? Because whether or not pros want to admit it, and it makes a lot of them mad to even talk about it, the audience has decided they do not want Fortnite build mode in its current state. And if those pros want to survive, if the build mode content creators want to survive, they have to be open to change. Don't be so negative about the things Epic is doing to the game, because they're trying to save their own game, and by proxy, they're trying to save your careers as well, my guys. You're in a esports environment that is rapidly declining. You're not in Call of Duty. You're not in Counter-Strike. You're not in League of Legends. These are games that have lasted for 10, 15 years. You're in a place that had a very high monetary peak and then quickly tapered off, and could completely evaporate within a year and a half to 2 years. You gotta be wary.
How long before no builds follows the same fate as conventional Fortnite, and players become frustrated that their opponents are too good or too sweaty?
There is a learning curve, certainly, but man, it's a PvP game. If you're gonna play player versus player, you gotta be ready to get some skill. Otherwise, why are you even playing this kind of game at the end of the day? What I think is that right now, Fortnite third person Zero Build is the best battle royale experience for any casual player. Anybody who starts battle royale, has never played any of them, should just try Fortnite.
Fortnite as a game has survived and on every account thrived for over 5 years now, with no builds only being added a little over 6 months ago. If Epic were to continue their focus on no builds as the primary game mode, would it return the game to its previous glory, or instead shun the audience that has kept the game alive all this time? Hype around the conventional building side of the game is at an all-time low.
I do agree with his points there. I find it interesting that he's showing Tfue though, because Tfue had completely quit this game and only came back for Zero Build. There's a lot of people that are coming back for Zero Build. Truly, the future of Fortnite is in Epic Games' hands, and it falls on them to create some sort of transitional mode between Zero Build and Build mode. Even if everyone who plays Zero Build isn't going to try it, they have to feed the beast. They're the ones who have to invite people to make that switch. If they don't do that, it's not going to happen. AussieAntics has a good point that all the items that they've created and most of the new tournaments are for Zero Build. And what did they do for build tournaments? They made them even harder to get into. They made more divisions with less money. Sometimes you just gotta smell the blood in the water.
Is no build the future of Fortnite? Honestly, I don't know. But I don't think we'll have to wait long for the answer, as the FNCS Invitational, the first Epic Grand LAN event since World Cup, is on November 12th.
It's gonna be the first Fortnite LAN event in years, since the beginning of the whole problematic homestay event. It'll be interesting to see what Fortnite build mode is now, because all these players, they've been in the dungeon, man. They've just been cranking them. They've just been cranking 90s, hitting edit courses, hitting creative for the better part of 2 years. I'm very interested to see how much people care about it, because World Cup 2, by my estimation, my prediction, it's going to be this next summer. And Epic's going to have a big decision to make. Are they going to make the World Cup 2 build mode or Zero Build mode? Because at the end of the day, you want as many eyes on it as possible. You want as many casual players to tune into it and watch it and support it. Because the whole esports thing, it runs on advertising. It runs on sponsorships, which they judge how much they're going to give you based on how many people you have watching, how many people might buy a product. It remains to be seen, but I invite you to stop into my stream this weekend. If you enjoy this type of content in this video, be sure to like and subscribe, share it with someone you love, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.